I never imagined that returning to Grandview Farm, my grandfather's quiet stretch of land tucked behind the cedar-lined backroads of Silverbrook County, would lead me into a war with a homeowners association armed with lawyers, bulldozers, and forged documents. Yet the moment I saw three bright yellow machines growling at the edge of my driveway that misty morning, their engines coughing smoke and rattling the early air, I realized peace was sometimes just the calm before the ambush. And everything I thought I had left behind, conflict, bureaucracy, grief, was waiting to be tested, provoked, and ultimately reshaped. My name is Jeremy Renner, and after spending decades as a county surveyor, the kind of man who practically lived inside dusty archives and studied boundary lines until the numbers blurred, I decided to retire early when my wife passed away, my heart fractured in ways that maps and measurements could never quantify. And in the search for healing, I returned to the land where I learned to hold a compass and where my childhood summers were painted with hayfields and creek water. I sought silence, reflection, and routine, milk the cows, fix fences, rebuild an old porch swing. Not conflict. Life offered soft moments, cups of coffee at sunrise, long talks beside the fence with my neighbor Lucy Powell, a retired investigative journalist whose kindness hid a sharp mind and relentless curiosity, and weekend card games with Bruce Fletcher, deputy archivist at the county registrar office, and the closest thing I had to a brother. But peace rarely survives when power tastes greed, and just beyond the tree line, a new luxury neighborhood rose. Oakshire Estates, an upscale enclave led by Elaine Prescott, the aggressive, eloquent, and impeccably dressed president of the Oakshire HOA, someone who believed regulations were weapons and negotiations were merely a formality before domination. At first, it was laughable. Letters piling in my mailbox demanding usage fees for the driveway I owned outright, citations for imaginary violations, and threats disguised under pleasant fonts and legal jargon. I skimmed them, chuckled, and tossed them into what I jokingly called my crazy neighbor's file, never suspecting that madness would soon grow teeth. Weeks passed, and those polite letters evolved into ultimatums, threats, and finally a morning spectacle where three bulldozers blocked my driveway, their blades sinking into gravel like fangs, while Elaine, clipboard in hand, approached with an air of triumph, announcing inflated fines and demanding I sign an agreement to transfer partial rights. I confronted her, anger simmering beneath my calm voice, and while she paraded forged surveys claiming her HOA had jurisdiction over my driveway, I recognized discrepancies instantly. Wrong coordinates, signatures I never made, and seals altered unnaturally, yet despite my experience, I lacked tangible proof to expose the fraud in that moment. The conflict had begun, and as I watched bulldozers idle eagerly, their engines echoing across the valley, I understood something chilling. This was not a misunderstanding. This was an orchestrated seizure, and my grief-filled sanctuary had become a battlefield. The only choice left was to fight back. With my driveway blocked and negotiations impossible, Lucy drove me through her pasture to reach the main road, a detour symbolic of the journey ahead, and we made our way into town to meet Bruce at the county headquarters, where dusty files and aging shelves held the truth buried under ink and bureaucracy. Hours in the archive revealed two crucial discoveries. First, my driveway never touched Oakshire land. It sat wholly on my property, secured by a legal trust established by my grandfather decades earlier. Second, a revised survey filed 3 years ago contained my forged signature and an unfamiliar seal. Clear evidence of document tampering, a felony, not an HOA dispute. Word spread quietly when Melora Lawson, a retired judge known for her no-nonsense reasoning, reviewed our findings and confirmed the severity. This wasn't petty HOA overreach. This was a calculated land grab, a criminal scheme. Digging deeper, we unearthed something far more explosive. West Ridge Partners, a development corporation owned by James Prescott, Elaine's husband, had plans to build condos and a commercial center right on my land. My driveway was merely the first domino in a larger blueprint of acquisition and profit. But the twist that shook even me The survey errors from 15 years ago meant that nearly 15% of Oakshire estates, including the pristine clubhouse and even Elaine's own home, were actually sitting on land belonging to my family trust. As that revelation settled, we met Mark Ruffalo, a gentle gardener who had once owned a Rose estate, stripped from him through similar HOA intimidation. Then came whispers from county employees, ex-residents, and elderly homeowners, stories of manipulation, coercion, and heartache, all at the hands of Elaine, a woman whose hunger for status transformed an HOA into her personal kingdom. Our team grew. Lucy, gathering testimonies and recording video evidence. Bruce, retrieving old maps and unedited surveys. Caroline Bennett, the county attorney, outlining potential charges, fraud, forgery, property damage. Sheriff Daniel Jackson, a man who loathed HOA overreach more than anyone, offering to intervene at the right moment. We returned to the farm as the sun reached its peak, the deadline Elaine imposed. The bulldozers revved, ready to scrape away my driveway. But this time, we did not arrive alone. Residents, police, legal counsel, and neighbors stood united. A showdown brewed at the gates of my farm, tension thick enough to taste. And in that moment, I realized the story was no longer about boundary lines. It was about justice, community, and truth. In the open air, beneath a sky as tense as the crowd, Sheriff Jackson demanded documentation. And as Elaine smugly presented her altered surveys, I countered with originals, maps drawn decades earlier, notarized and authenticated. Gasps echoed when I revealed the bombshell. Oakshire Estates had encroached on my land, not the other way around, and when Caroline displayed the development plans of West Ridge Partners, the puzzle pieces snapped together. The HOA's intimidation, the forged surveys, the bulldozers, tools of acquisition for a more lucrative empire. And then the slip. Elaine, furious, barked that those confidential documents shouldn't be public, inadvertently admitting their authenticity. The crowd erupted in disbelief as Barbara Winters, a board member, stepped forward, betrayal in her voice, accusing Elaine of manipulation. James Prescott arrived, attempting to salvage control, but in doing so confirmed West Ridge's intentions, enraging residents who had trusted the HOA to protect them, not exploit them. Accusations grew louder. Forged documents, record tampering, property destruction, conspiracy. Even the construction foreman, Arnold Davenport, withdrew support, apologizing and ordering his crew to stand down. I addressed the residents, not with vengeance, but fairness. I promised not to uproot their homes. Instead, offer legal transfers for a modest fee, ensuring they secure their land fully and ethically, something the HOA never intended. Sheriff Jackson then took action, detaining Elaine pending investigation, and as she was escorted away, the illusion of power dissolved. She was no queen, just a woman whose ambition drowned her conscience. In the months that followed, Elaine and James faced charges, their assets frozen. Barbara led the HOA toward transparency. Caroline and Bruce established restitution funds. Mark acquired new land to grow his roses. Victor Harmon, a major investor, turned whistleblower to avoid entanglement. Oakshire rewrote bylaws, limiting authority, mandating audits, and requiring community votes. And at Grandview Farm, transformation blossomed. Community gardens, shared harvests, and weekend BBQs replaced the tension once sown in the soil. I helped draft ethical land policies, the renter regulations, ensuring others never faced similar deception. 6 months later, as twilight painted the sky gold, I stood with Lucy, Bruce, and Mark near the fence where bulldozers once threatened and felt something rare: closure. I had lost time, peace, even fragments of myself during the battle, yet gained something deeper, a community that chose solidarity over silence. I once thought the driveway was the heart of the conflict, but now I understood it was merely a line on a map, while the true boundaries were moral, not geographical. And so, I leave you with this question. When power disguises itself as authority, and justice stands in its path, who bears the responsibility to challenge it? The individual whose rights are violated, or the community that witnesses the violation? Where does liberty end and where does accountability begin?